Good evening, I'm James Ezimoha and you're watching A News. Here are top stories. The International Monetary Fund cuts growth forecast for most countries in wake of century-high U.S. tariffs. Pope Francis's funeral will be held on Saturday. A solemn ceremony will draw leaders from around the world. Drones and guided bombs strike Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia and Odessa as President Zelensky says Ukraine is ready for talks. The International Monetary Fund has cut its economic growth forecast for 2025, saying an increase in tariffs and uncertainty will lead to a significant slowdown. In its latest global outlook, the IMF predicts the global economy will grow by 2.8% this year, down from its previous forecast of 3.3%. The US has been given the biggest downgrade among advanced economies. Growth there is now expected to be 1.8% this year, down from its previous estimate of 2.7%. The IMF said the swift escalation of trade tensions and extremely high levels of uncertainty about the future policies would have a significant impact on global economic activity. Gold prices have hit a record high, climbing above $3,500 with a 31% gain so far this year. The surge is partially driven by President Trump's push for global tariffs, which has made gold a popular safe haven. Tensions increased after Trump criticized Fed Chair Powell, raising fears he might replace him with someone who would cut rates. This uncertainty has pushed more investors toward gold. The U.S. president is planning to impose record-high tariffs on solar panel imports of companies from 4 Southeast Asian countries. The tariffs follow a year-old investigation involving major solar panel equipment producers.
Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia and Vietnam are the 4 Southeast Asian countries facing U.S. tariffs of up to 3,521% on solar panel imports, as announced by the U.S. Commerce Department. The tariffs come after a year-long investigation that started when several big solar equipment makers claimed Chinese companies were selling solar products at very low prices, hurting U.S. businesses. They asked the previous Biden administration to step in and protect U.S. jobs. The countervailing and anti-dumping tariffs differ depending on the company and the country where their solar products are produced. Products from Cambodia would face the highest tariffs at 3,521% due to non-cooperation with the U.S. investigation. Jinko Solar's products from Malaysia might see duties of just over 41%, while Trina Solar's from Thailand could face tariffs of 375%. The new tariffs would come on top of those previously imposed by the Trump administration. In 2023, the U.S. imported nearly $12 billion worth of solar equipment from Malaysia, Cambodia, Thailand and Vietnam, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Critics warn that the tariffs could drive up the cost of imported solar parts, potentially hurting U.S. producers and slowing clean energy progress. While some domestic manufacturers may benefit, others relying on foreign components could face higher costs, impacting solar adoption and raising prices for consumers.
The Vatican is entering a deeply significant moment marked by both mourning and transition as the Catholic Church prepares to bid farewell to Pope Francis. Attention now turns to the ceremonial traditions ahead and to what comes next for the papacy.
The Vatican has announced that the funeral of Pope Francis will take place this Saturday, April the 26th, in St. Peter's Square, setting the stage for a solemn ceremony that will draw world leaders and dignitaries from across the globe. Roman Catholic cardinals gathered at the Vatican on Tuesday to finalise the plans. Their meeting comes just weeks before a conclave is expected to begin to elect the next head of the Roman Catholic Church. Video released by the Vatican today shows the late pontiff's open casket inside the chapel of the Santa Marta residence, where he lived throughout his 12-year papacy. His body rests in a simple wooden coffin draped with red cloth as nuns sing prayers and clergy stand in silent reverence. On Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. local time, Pope Francis's body will be moved in a formal procession into the nearby St. Peter's Basilica, where the faithful will have the opportunity to pay their final respects. The funeral mass is scheduled for Saturday at 10 a.m. in St. Peter's Square, in the shadow of the Grand Basilica, where Pope Francis once led worship, marking the end of an era for the first Latin American pope.
We expect that world leaders coming for the papal funeral, including U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, will be seated in the front row or towards the front of the funeral in St. Peter's Square on Saturday morning. We might see some images of the world leaders greeting each other. The ceremony will be solemn. It will be a funeral, an opportunity for Catholics around the world to mourn the Pope, who led the Catholic Church for 12 years.
All cardinals currently in Rome were called to a meeting on Tuesday to organise the sequence of events in the coming days and oversee the Church's daily functions during this period of transition. Following Pope Francis's death, the College of Cardinals is expected to gather next month in the Sistine Chapel, one of the most iconic spaces in the Vatican, to begin the secretive process of electing the next Pope.
The world is uniting in mourning after the death of Pope Francis at the age of 88. Across continents, tributes are pouring in for the pontiff, remembered for his humility, compassion, and efforts to bring people together.
In Singapore, the Cathedral of the Good Shepherd overflowed with mourners on a humid day. Worshippers shared heartfelt memories of the Pope Francis's recent visit to Asia, despite his frail health.
He's just like Jesus. He does the work of Jesus. Yeah. I'm feeling a bit emotional. I'm sorry. No. All right? And that's what we believe.
Do this in memory of me.
In East Timor and Indonesia, flags were flown at half-mast. Catholics and Muslims alike gathered in prayer, honouring the Pope's legacy of unity and tolerance.
As a believer, I am very sad that we have lost the Pope.
In Madrid, solemnity filled the Apostolic Nunciature, where citizens signed a condolence book in his memory.
Out of emotion, because I felt in my heart I had to come here since yesterday, since he died, and they said we could come to pay condolences. I had it prepared.
In Germany, mourners gathered outside Cologne Cathedral, lighting candles and reflecting on the Pope's legacy.
We can only hope that we will find a successor who will continue what this man has done, that you have to care for people and nature.
The daily newspapers on Tuesday read, "Thank you, Francis," and everyone's Pope. At St. Peter's Square, faithful from all over the world gathered to share their love and respect.
Well, definitely it's a sad moment right now for the Catholic Church. Pope Francis was revolutionary.
The world now prepares to bid a final farewell. The pontiff's funeral will take place on Saturday at St. Peter's Basilica, a solemn ceremony to honour a pope who changed the church and touched hearts across every continent.
Ukraine's southeastern city of Zaporizhia was hit by a Russian attack that killed one person and injured over 23 others, including 4 children. According to Regional Governor Ivan Fedorov, the injured were taken to the hospital, with one child in critical condition. The strike also set cars on fire, damaged residential buildings, and an infrastructure facility. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that Kyiv remains committed to halting attacks on civilian infrastructure and is prepared for dialogue aimed at achieving lasting ceasefire, speaking ahead of key meetings with European and US officials scheduled for Wednesday. Zelensky said that a real and sustainable peace must begin with an unconditional ceasefire. He called on Moscow to provide a clear response to Ukraine's proposal and reiterated Kyiv's readiness for talks.
Ukraine maintains its proposal not to strike at least civilian infrastructure, and we are expecting a clear response from Moscow. We are ready for any conversation about how to achieve this. There is an obvious, simplest and most reliable path: to stop missile and long-range drone strikes, which would automatically ensure the protection of all civilian infrastructure. A ceasefire, real and lasting, must be the first step toward a reliable and enduring peace.
Iran and the US are signaling openness to a nuclear deal, with Tehran saying it's ready for an agreement based on equality, and Donald Trump calling recent meetings with Iran very good. Turaj Shiralilu has more from Tehran.
Iranian and US presidents have exchanged positive remarks regarding the ongoing nuclear negotiations. President Masoud Pezeshkian said a nuclear deal will be accessible if the US side comes to the talks on an equal basis. And President Donald Trump said both sides had very good meetings. President Pezeshkian told a meeting of governor generals in Tehran that a nuclear deal will be in hand if it secures Iran's national interests. He said Iran is neither pessimistic nor optimistic about these talks. Prior to the third round of talks, which will be held this weekend in Oman, Iran has doubled its shuttle diplomacy. Foreign Minister Araghchi is expected to visit Beijing on Wednesday. Last week, prior to the second round of talks, he visited Moscow before he flew to Rome for the talks. In Moscow, he handed over the message by Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Iran has also said that it will not negotiate about the details of the talks in public. After cancellation of Mr. Araghchi's online speech at the Carnegie International Conference on Nuclear Policy over the Q&A section of his speech, he said that this was probably going to discuss details of the talks, and Iran does not want to negotiate in public about these talks. Iran's Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghai has also rejected comments and news in certain Western media saying that Russia will be the place to stockpile Iran's enriched nuclear material, enriched uranium, as well as those reports saying that Russia will be the guarantor of a possible nuclear deal between Iran and US. He called these reports as media speculations. These round of talks, which will be held on Wednesday, in fact, at the expert level, and on Friday at the higher officials level, will be at least different in certain aspects. First, they will be preceded by experts meeting discussing details and key points and technical aspects of the talks. And number two, this time around, the talks are supported by the leaders, US and Iranian leaders back at their home after they have made and expressed positive remarks regarding the talks. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting for A News TV, Tehran.
Another chapter has unfolded in one of Washington's most shocking corruption scandals. Nadine Menendez, the wife of former U.S. Senator Bob Menendez, has been found guilty on 15 counts in a federal corruption case. Her sentencing is now set for June 12th. Nadine Menendez stood trial in New York and was convicted on Monday for her role in a far-reaching bribery scheme involving her husband, former Senator Bob Menendez. Federal prosecutors say the couple accepted bribes in form of gold bars, hundreds of thousands in cash, and even a luxury car. In return, Senator Menendez allegedly used his influence to push military aid to Egypt, interfere in a state-level criminal investigation, and promote a U.S. attorney candidate he believed he could manipulate. Authorities uncovered gold bars and nearly $500,000 in cash during the 2022 raid on the couple's New Jersey home. Earlier this year, Bob Menendez was sentenced to 11 years in prison. Matthew Podolsky, acting U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, called the couple partners in crime. Armenia is reshaping its foreign policy, distancing itself from old alliances and moving closer to the EU and the US. The shift comes amid strained ties with Russia and growing regional uncertainty.
Armenia's military cooperation with the European Union and the United States has seen a significant boost from early 2025, reflecting a strategic shift in the nation's security and defense approach. A major step towards closer ties with Europe occurred on the 24th of March, when the Armenian Parliament's Standing Committee on European Integration debated a bill officially launching the country's EU accession process. The proposed legislation notably features a new dedicated chapter on defense and security issues. Deputy Foreign Minister Paruyr Hovhannisyan, recently appointed Armenia's permanent representative to the UN, highlighted the EU's growing role in Armenia's security strategy, stating, "The EU is becoming a crucial partner for Armenia in the security domain. We have initiated political and security dialogues with 2 sessions already held." Hovhannisyan also revealed an imminent defense cooperation program with the EU, utilizing resources from the European Peace Facility. Further strengthening the EU-Armenia security partnership, a European Parliament resolution from March 2024 urged closer defense cooperation and greater support via the European Peace Facility. Reflecting this deeper commitment, Armenia appointed its first military attaché to Brussels in early March this year, marking a significant step toward closer defense collaboration. High-level visits also underline Armenia's strategic pivot. Security Council Secretary Armen Grigorian visited Brussels in April 2025 for discussions on enhanced defense ties, accompanied by senior aides. Earlier, Defense Minister Suren Papikyan visited Germany in February 2025, engaging directly with Belgian Defense Minister Theo Franken, signaling intensified cooperation. Armenia's collaboration with the United States has similarly strengthened. Prominent Armenian political analyst Hovsep Khurshudyan highlighted this development in an interview, stating, "American military units have been deployed from Germany to Armenia for joint training exercises and will remain until August. Even a limited American presence provides a significant security cushion." This view was echoed on social media by Armenian European Party leader Tigran Kazmalyan, who on 22nd March shared a photo with 3 US generals, General Fink, General Makali, and General Dorman, on his Facebook page, highlighting their discussions on strengthening military cooperation. High-level US visits have further cemented these ties. Brigadier General Michael Venerdi from Kansas visited Armenia this January, reinforcing cooperation under the Kansas-Armenia Partnership Program. Additionally, Armenian Chief of General Staff Lieutenant General Edvard Asryan held talks at the Munich Security Conference on 14 February 2025 with General Christopher Cavoli, commander of US European Command, focusing on deepening bilateral defense collaboration. Armenia is also actively building military partnerships with individual EU member states. Early 2025 witnessed extensive interactions with Greece, including a visit by General Major Artur Yeroyan on 3rd January and follow-up discussions led by Lieutenant General Edvard Asryan on 27th February. These meetings reaffirmed Greece's support for military reform in Armenia. Further European engagement included discussions with Dutch representatives in March 2025, referencing a prior agreement from the February Munich meeting, and defense cooperation agreements with Lithuania signed on the 14th of March. While clearly moving towards stronger Western partnerships, Armenia faces significant geopolitical challenges, particularly given its ongoing economic and energy reliance on Russia. This complexity necessitates a cautious yet determined approach to deepening ties with its new allies, navigating through existing geopolitical realities.
Now to Beijing. The president of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, has arrived in China for a state visit. The discussions will cover green technology, a joint electric vehicle project, and a possible mutual visa-free regime between the two countries. Our correspondent Andy Moich has more.
We're coming to you from Beijing, where the three-day state visit by the Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev at the invitation of Chinese President Xi Jinping has begun. Just on the way from the airport here to the city center, we could see lampposts decorated with the Azerbaijani and Chinese flags together. Now, as you can see here, it's pretty dark, so the main fixture of the visit, the meeting of the two presidents, is expected tomorrow. Now, a bit about the relations of the two countries. Since July last year, Azerbaijan and China are strategic partners. Now, that strategic partnership agreement is not only about trade, economy, and investments, it is also of political nature. China fully supports Azerbaijan's territorial integrity and national sovereignty, while Baku fully supports the One China policy. Now, when it comes to numbers, the trade turnover between the two countries has reached some $3.7 billion, which makes Azerbaijan the top trading partner of China in the South Caucasus region. Azerbaijan was one of the first nations to support and join the Belt and Road Initiative. Azerbaijan's position is very important to China because of its strategic location on the Middle Corridor, a transport route linking China to Europe and vice versa via the Caspian Sea. Now, the Middle Corridor's transport volume has increased significantly in previous years, partly due to the sanctions on Russia, because the other alternative, the North Corridor, to link China and Europe, goes mainly through Russia. But the other reason is that Azerbaijan and other nations on the route of the Middle Corridor have invested heavily into expanding the capabilities and the sheer volume, the capacity of cargo they can transfer and process. Ahead of this visit, a dozen days or so earlier, the Intergovernmental Commission of the two countries met in Baku, where they said that the investment processes are successful, mainly in the oil and gas field, then industry, and then green technology. Now, when it comes to green technology, a deal is about to be made and started, a joint project between Azerbaijani partners and the Chinese electric vehicle maker BYD, and that is one of the things that is expected to be announced tomorrow at the meeting of the two leaders. One of the other things that is being talked about is the possibility that a mutual visa-free regime will be announced tomorrow, since Azerbaijan unilaterally waived visas for Chinese citizens. There has been an uptick of Chinese tourists in Azerbaijan. Now, we will see if that will make it to the agenda. For now, from Beijing, for A News, Andy Moich.
Azerbaijan and Algeria have held their second round of political consultations in Algiers. Talks focused on boosting cooperation in politics, trade and energy, particularly in oil and gas. The meeting was led by Azerbaijan's Deputy Foreign Minister, Yalcin Rafiev, and Algeria's Foreign Ministry Secretary General, Lons Magangram. They discussed working together in global organizations such as the United Nations, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and the Non-Aligned Movement. A key highlight is that Azerbaijan will host the 2026 OIC Summit, marking its growing global role. Armenia's Parliament Speaker Alen Simonian reflected on his recent short meeting with his Azerbaijani counterpart Sahiba Jafarova in St. Petersburg, calling it a step toward dialogue. The meeting took place in the framework of the Commonwealth of Independent States Interparliamentary Assembly. Simonian noted the importance of continued communication between the two countries' legislative bodies amid ongoing regional challenges. Simonian also stated that he believes Azerbaijan is also interested in the speedy normalization of relations with Armenia, just as the latter says. Georgian Foreign Minister Maka Botshorishvili met with OSCE Secretary General Feridun Sinirlioglu in Tbilisi to discuss regional security and ongoing peace efforts in the South Caucasus. At a joint briefing, Botshorishvili expressed support for the planned peace deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia, stressing Georgia's readiness to play an active role. She also welcomed the recent trilateral meeting in Tbilisi as a step toward deeper regional cooperation. Secretary General Sinirlioglu praised Georgia's role in promoting stability, calling it vital not only for the country, but for the entire region. Kazakhstan deepens economic ties with Russia, but Europe is stepping in too. As trade with Moscow hits new highs, Italy prepares for a major diplomatic debut in Central Asia. Our Fariza Kalimodzina has more.
Kazakhstan and Russia aim to boost their bilateral trade to $30 billion, up from $27.8 billion last year. Over the past 2 decades, Russian investors have poured $26 billion into the Kazakh economy, while Kazakh companies have invested approximately $9 billion in Russia. Last year, Russian investment in Kazakhstan rose by 32%, reaching $4 billion. The Kazakh Prime Minister described this as a historic figure. More than 23,000 companies with Russian participation currently operate in Kazakhstan. That's nearly 40% of all foreign enterprises in the country. These joint ventures cover key industries: mechanical engineering, metallurgy, and chemicals. In fact, 1 in every 3 foreign capital enterprises in Kazakhstan involves Russian partners. Moscow continues to emphasize Kazakhstan's role as a key strategic partner in the Eurasian region. Nearly 70% of bilateral trade now happens through direct cooperation between regional authorities. Meanwhile, European interest in Central Asia is picking up momentum. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is set to visit Uzbekistan on April 25 to 26. Just a day later, she will be in Astana for the first ever Central Asia-Italy summit, where leaders from all 5 Central Asian countries are expected. Italy is already one of Kazakhstan's top 3 trading partners and ranks 5th when it comes to direct foreign investment. Last year, trade between the two countries reached about $20 billion. The Central Asia Plus One format has become a popular diplomatic tool for Western countries, whether it's the European Union, Germany, the United States, Japan, or now Italy. As global competition for influence intensifies, Central Asia is emerging as a focal point of international diplomacy. And each new summit is no longer just a formality, it's part of a broader geopolitical contest for the heart of Eurasia. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalimodzina, A News.
With rising global tensions and shipping risks, China is redrawing its trade map by constructing a new railway to Europe, one that avoids its close ally, Russia. Here's how this strategic shift could reshape trade routes and geopolitics.
China has started building a new railway through Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan to connect more directly with Europe without going through Russia. According to The Economist, this multi-billion-dollar project is part of China's effort to protect its exports and trade routes, especially as global tensions rise and security risks grow. The new railway, known as part of the Middle Corridor, is meant to offer a faster and safer path to European markets. It avoids Russian territory, which has become less reliable since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. Many European companies have stopped using the old route through Russia due to sanctions, rising insurance costs and safety concerns. Instead, freight is now moving through Kazakhstan to the Caspian Sea, then onward through Azerbaijan and Turkey. China hopes the new railway through Central Asia will make this middle corridor even shorter and more efficient. The new line is 520 kilometres long, and China is lending Kyrgyzstan $2.35 billion to help build it. Although this route is still slower and more expensive than going through Russia, improvements have cut travel times from over 50 days to just under 23. By sea, the journey takes about a month. Rail trade between China and Europe has grown from $8 billion in 2016 to $57 billion in 2023. China sees the Middle Corridor as important, especially after Houthi attacks in the Red Sea raised fears about sea shipping. According to The Economist, China continues to trade heavily with Russia, especially for energy and raw materials. But for exports to Europe, it wants safer and faster alternatives. Both China and the EU want to bypass Russia, although their reasons differ.
In Kabul this week, Afghanistan saw a wave of high-level diplomatic activity focused on economic partnerships and humanitarian efforts. Our correspondent Taimim Bahis has more from Kabul.
Acting Minister of Water and Energy Abdulatif Mansour met with Russian Ambassador Dmitry Zernov. The two sides discussed investment in Afghanistan's energy and water sectors, including dam construction and renewable energy projects. The minister welcomed Russian companies to take part and thanked Russia for removing the Taliban from its list of prohibited groups. Ambassador Zernov responded by inviting the minister to attend the upcoming Kazan Economic Forum in May this year. In another key meeting, Deputy Agriculture Minister Sadr Azam Osmani hosted Iranian Ambassador Ali Raza Begdali. Iran expressed interest in importing Afghan meat and agricultural goods, noting it currently imports such products from as far as the United States. Iran proposed a joint cooperation commission and invited Afghanistan to participate in Iran Expo 2025 with offers to collaborate on exports, livestock and irrigation systems. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Refugees and Repatriation alongside UNAMA led a technical meeting on the situation of Afghan refugees and IDPs. Officials highlighted the return of over 800,000 refugees from Pakistan since late 2023. UNAMA reported $183 million in humanitarian aid spent last year and pledged continued support for shelter, integration and services. From economic ties with neighbors to support for returnees, this week reflected growing international engagement with Afghanistan's future. This is Taimim Bahis in Kabul for A News.
Turkey says it's marked a significant milestone in its national aerospace program. The domestically developed UAV AK Sungur, produced by Turkish Aerospace Industries, has achieved a record-breaking flight, showcasing not just high-altitude capabilities, but also the seamless integration of several homegrown defense technologies.
Turkey's unmanned combat aerial vehicle has reached an altitude of 40,000 feet. That's more than 12,000 kilometers. The Aksungur UAV is powered by the locally developed TEI PD-170 engine. Built by Turkish Aerospace Industries or TAI, the company says it marks a new altitude record for national aerospace engineering. The company says the onboard systems were also successfully tested during the flight, including the Aselflir 500, an advanced electro-optical system developed by Aselsan, and the heated battery unit produced by Aspilsan. Officials say both systems performed flawlessly at high altitude, underlining the growing maturity of Turkey's defense technology ecosystem. Earlier this month, Aksungur also demonstrated precision strike capabilities, deploying Aselsan-manufactured LGK-81 and LGK-82 guided munitions. The unmanned aircraft achieved direct hits on its designated targets, confirming its role as a high-performance combat platform.
Well, exactly a year ago, on the 22nd of April 2024, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, for the first time in 13 years, visited Baghdad, the capital city of Iraq, marking a milestone and a reset in bilateral relations between the two countries. Now joining us is Hamdi Rifai, Government Relations Executive Director for MOS Strategies and foreign affairs analyst from Washington. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
A year after the reset in Turkey-Iraqi bilateral relations, what are the key items on the bilateral agenda between these two countries, and to what extent could Ankara's Iraq policy might have influenced by what happened in Syria?
So clearly, Iraq and Turkey have had strained relations since the 1950s. The basis of that strain was really found in security, water, and trade issues. As we saw, they signed over 20, I think it might have been 26 or 28 different agreements between Iraq and Turkey during their meeting 1 year ago. Now, those agreements focused on water because Iraq had made claims that Turkey was preventing water or restricting the water to Iraq, as Syria had made similar claims against Turkey. And Turkey had made claims against Iraq regarding security because of PKK terrorism incursions that came from Iraqi territory. Now we're seeing they have a third issue, which is trade and the opportunity to develop trade through Iraq as a corridor into Turkey and Europe from the Gulf.
Thank you. In the case of a likely U.S. withdrawal from Iraq, what are the challenges and opportunities associated with Turkey's renewed focus on this country?
So the United States' presence in Iraq, when it initially had created the coalition of the willing, if you will, in Iraq, Turkey was not a part of that. And there was quite a bit of loss of power and influence in Iraq as a result of that. Now with the U.S. slowly beginning to pull away from Iraq, and as we saw, they've started to pull out of Syria as well, we're going to see a renewed interest from Turkey in regaining that influence and control, because there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity for growth in trade, and there's an opportunity for addressing the security issues much more aggressively than they have in the past. Now, while Turkey had engaged in incursions to battle the PKK in Iraq, now it's going to come with the blessings of the Iraqi government and with some degree of cooperation, and maybe even a military base that is done through Iraq. And Turkey has long supported centralization of power in Iraq in one government, rather than the split that we saw with the Kurdish region in the north. Now, we'll see that that power shifts back to the central Iraqi government.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rifai, for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
A long-lost masterpiece by pioneering Ottoman artist Osman Hamdi Bey is set to captivate the art world once again. The piece is called Preparing Coffee and is a work unseen for more than a century. It's expected to fetch between $1.3 million and $1.9 million at the Sotheby's auction house in London. The rediscovery of the 1881 painting is being hailed as a major moment in the world of Orientalist art.
A long-lost painting by pioneering Ottoman artist Osman Hamdi Bey, titled Preparing Coffee, is set to go under the hammer at Sotheby's in London on the 29th of April. The artwork is expected to sell for between $1.3 to $1.9 million in the prestigious auction house's Orientalist art sale. For decades, this painting existed only in memory and in a faded black and white photograph taken by the famed 19th century Ottoman photography studio Sebah and Joyelir. The original painting itself was thought lost until recently, when it emerged from a private collection in Austria. Claude Penning, senior international specialist in European paintings at Sotheby's, describes the rediscovery as very unexpected.
Well, it was a very unexpected rediscovery. I was approached by a gentleman whom I've known for many years, who proposed this picture to me, he had recently bought it from someone else who had bought it a few years ago from the family, the European family, in whose possession it had been for almost 75 years, certainly since around 1930. So prior to that, the picture had been in collections in what is now Georgia, Azerbaijan. So those were, of course, in those days, Muslim lands. And it makes sense that the picture would have found its way, presumably from Istanbul through those countries, eventually to Vienna.
The painting dates back to 1881 and is considered part of Osman Hamdi Bey's most productive early period. The subject matter, a culturally rich portrayal of Turkish coffee preparation, adds to the piece's historical and artistic significance.
On the one hand, the painting is obviously of a Turkish subject and depicted through the eyes of a Turkish painter, which I think is a lovely idea, but in a style that is not indigenous to Turkey. It's a style that Hamdi Bey picked up when he studied in France at the École des Beaux-Arts. So in that sense, the picture really is a bridge between cultures.
The painting's journey is as fascinating as the piece itself. Acquired around 1910 by Georgian art collector Prince Sadiq Yadigarov, it later passed to his son Archil. In the 1930s, it entered the collection of a relative in Vienna through marriage, remaining with that family until 2008. Now, after more than a century of mystery and movement, Preparing Coffee is preparing to make history once again, this time under the hammer.
Israeli media has recently turned the spotlight on Asaf Mishayev, a practicing Jew from Azerbaijan, who is set to proudly represent the country at the Eurovision Song Contest 2025 in Switzerland. For Azerbaijan, this recognition is not only welcomed, it is a reflection of the country's deep-rooted commitment to multiculturalism and religious tolerance.
Asaf Sefail Mishayev, a 32-year-old Jewish musician from Baku, will make history as Azerbaijan's representative at Eurovision 2025 in Switzerland. He is the lead singer of Mamagama, a band that mixes traditional Azerbaijani music with indie rock and pop. Mishayev comes from Azerbaijan's mountain Jewish community, which has roots going back over 2,000 years. He graduated from Baku's Or Avner Jewish School and teaches music to children at a local Jewish music school. In interviews, Mishayev has shared his pride in representing both Azerbaijan and the Jewish people. His participation highlights Azerbaijan's commitment to diversity and inclusion. Jewish citizens have long been part of Azerbaijan's cultural and civic life. Israeli media have warmly welcomed Mishayev's selection, reflecting strong ties between the two nations. As Eurovision approaches, Mishayev and his bandmates, Hassan Haidar and Arif Imanov, will perform their song Run With You. They represent not just Azerbaijan, but the spirit of unity through diversity.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.